Have you ever had an interaction with someone where you felt like you were both speaking different languages, even though you weren't? I had a moment like that recently where I was trying to complete a vendor process in my client's platform, and I got stuck. So I wrote to Daniel, the support guy, and things got a little interesting. Daniel would answer my email, but he wouldn't answer my question. I would ask for clarification. He would send me a cryptic message. I would send him a screenshot, and he would send me a manual I already had. All the while, I noticed Daniel didn't have a phone number in his email signature. Okay? 2 weeks later, I'm still stuck. Does this sound familiar to any of you? Okay. It happens all the time. And you know what? It's costing companies big time. Because it turns out that a Harris poll showed that poor communication costs companies around $12,000 per employee per year. And that is the equivalent of about 8 hours per week wasted. Okay? So part of the problem is struggling to find the right channel with an over-reliance on written communication, as we can see with Daniel, wasn't really working. But another part of the problem is struggling to find the right approach. That same poll showed that 71% of respondents feel that they struggle to find the right words for fear of offending people. And I've heard that from many of the leaders that I coach when they say things to me like, Maria, how do I give somebody corrective feedback without demoralizing them? Or how do I say no without alienating my stakeholder? And sometimes it's difficult. It's not like you can just watch a YouTube video and suddenly become proficient in situational awareness, right? But that's where it's important to take that step back, okay? So when we talk about thinking about what the next step is, I can tell you that I've made a lot of mistakes myself. For one thing, I spent half of my life abroad, which meant that by the time I was 18, I had already attended like 9 different schools. And I was the new kid every couple of years. That meant making a lot of mistakes, like the time I almost kissed somebody on the mouth, because it turns on Spain does 2 kisses, and I stopped. Oops. So you realize that what may work in one environment may not work in another. But I realized that one thing that was very important was to observe and adjust. And those skills proved vital because it turns out that those were the skills that I brought with me. They helped me so that I could train and coach leaders so that they could untangle communication challenges and get things done. Now, developing interpersonal intelligence really pays off because that's what's going to help your team move forward. Being able to navigate a conversation or manage a misunderstanding before it escalates will shape the way your team solves problems and collaborates. The way you manage a difficult conversation or give feedback will impact the trust, the motivation, and the performance of your team. Now, to be able to help my clients, I put together this framework that I call CLEAR. And you see the little handout there. Okay? CLEAR stands for conveying context, listening, empathizing, adjusting, and reframing. And I'm going to quiz you later, right? Now, why did I name it CLEAR? Well, for obvious reasons. And I know you probably think it's super clever. But mostly, it was because after hearing the same challenges over and over again, whether it's feedback or presenting effectively or negotiating, I realized that many of those issues could be addressed by many of the same elements within the model. And I'll walk you through it. Let's start with convey context, okay? And these are the mnemonics to help you remember. Okay, when you convey context, it's about sharing the vision before you get into the what and the how. Because when you share where you're coming from with someone, it's easier for them to follow your reasoning. You're giving them the courtesy, okay? So I had a manager that I was coaching, and she was trying to get her team to adopt a new process. So she gave them a little bit of context. She started out by saying, team, our current process is a bit cumbersome, so in order to save time, we're migrating to a new process. Okay, she just got ahead of the but why question. And you've got half of the battle won if you start off with that why. But it's not enough. It's important to make sure you listen and empathize. That's about hearing the intent behind the words. And you'd be surprised that when you open yourself up to perhaps even changing your own preconceived narrative, you can get so much further by understanding underlying issues. So in this case, Laura, when she saw that there was a little bit of pushback, instead of doubling down, she explored by asking open-ended questions. Questions that start with what and how. So team, what specifically about this process do you find difficult? Turns out it wasn't so much the process, but rather the perception that spending the time to learn a brand new process just wasn't worth their while. So armed with that new information, it becomes a little bit more easier to adjust and reframe. There, it's just about tweaking the message to make it more palatable and remembering to ensure that the receiver knows what's in it for you or what's in it for us. You can now reframe it, and Laura said something like this. Team, it took me 2 hours to learn this process, but I found that the tool is really great at detecting errors, which will avoid our rework, prevent us from scrambling at the end, and give us more control of our time. Now she had addressed their concerns, and it was easier for her to find the alignment and implementation that she was seeking. Now, by the way, remember Daniel? I could have kept spinning my wheels and getting frustrated, but instead I decided to use clear. See if you can identify some of the elements in my conversation with him. Daniel, I could really use your help to get the information to Anna so she can process the PO. I know you probably have a lot of requests, and I don't want to take up more of your time going back and forth with lengthy emails. How do you suggest we proceed, and would it make sense to have a phone call? Daniel decided to talk to me, and we solved everything in 10 minutes. That's the power of clear, going from frustration to resolution. Now, ultimately, the future belongs to leaders who are able to untangle those communication challenges and go from misunderstanding to understanding. Because interpersonal intelligence is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And it's something that no technology is going to be able to replace. So here's my challenge to you. Commit to clear. And now I want everyone to do it with me. Are we ready? What goes first? Convey context. Listen. Come on, I want to see your hands. Listen. Empathize. Adjust and reframe. Make it a habit. It'll make your life easier. Let's be clear.